Greetings, everyone. This is Jeff Wilkerson, professor of physics at Luther College, bringing you the next in our series of what to look for in the night sky. We're talking about the week of May 8th, 2023 this time around. We got to go. We got so much stuff. This is another one of these bonus weeks where we're going to look at something different each night of the week. And so we got a lot to squeeze in there. This may stretch to 30 or 40 minutes if we're not careful. Lucky you. I wish I could have the joy of discovering me talking for 30 or 40 minutes, but here we go. Let's start on the evening of the 8th. As it gets dark, Mars is shining brightly in Gemini. Venus is the brightest object in the evening sky right now. The moon is fading away. It's waning. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Mars, there's Castor and Pollux, the twin stars, a couple of bright stars in Gemini. Mars sits below them. So you go to Castor to Pollux and drop down below Pollux about the same distance, maybe a little more. You get to Mars. But Mars is sitting 1.5 degrees on the evening of the 8th and 9th. Mars is sitting 1.5 degrees sort of southwest of Kappa Geminorium, 3.5 magnitude star. So check it out. You should be able to see it with your naked eye right there. A pair of binoculars is going to make it pop out. Watch Mars. Mars and Venus, we've talked about this for weeks. They're still in prograde motion. They're still tracking easterly against the background stars. So you can watch Mars move relative to Kappa Geminorium as the week progresses. Same for Venus. Venus is going to move even more. And so Venus, the next night, on the night of the 9th, as it gets dark, Venus is in Gemini, and it's sitting just above, sort of 1 3/4 degrees above the beautiful open star cluster M35. So a pair of binoculars should show you M35 as a ghostly glow right there. A small telescope is going to make that a fantastic object to see. So watch Venus in the region, in Gemini, in near open cluster M35. Now last week, we talked about stars fusing hydrogen into helium in their cores. And as they do so, they're what we call main sequence stars right here. Brightness of the star graphed up this way, temperature of the star across this way. Now stars run out of hydrogen fuel faster if they're heavier. They have more hydrogen fuel if they're bigger, if they're more massive, but they're burning it at such a higher rate they run out of that fuel and they become red giants. We talked about that. But that means all of these stars, if you plot an open star cluster like M35, all of the stars in that cluster on a graph like this, right when they're first born, you can't actually do that because the high mass stars reach this main sequence while the low mass stars are still forming down here. But never mind that for a second. If you plot them, they follow this sequence, the high mass stars are going to disappear. So when you look at an HR diagram like this of a cluster of stars, you will see that the high mass stars are gone, and the older the cluster is, the further down this way, the main sequence is eaten away. It'll look something like this. We call that the turnoff point, and that turnoff point tells us how old the cluster is. M35 has a turnoff point that's relatively high up there. It's a fairly young cluster. It's not a super young cluster, but it's a fairly young cluster, just short of 100 million years old. Okay, the sun is 4.5 billion years old by way of reference, so it's on the younger side, so the sun would be way down here. It's nowhere close to have eaten away to the sun at 100 million years. So check that out. Think about this on the evening of the 9th. For the evening of the 10th, my recommendation then is to say you go Castor, Pollux, Mars, and jump across here about the distance from Castor to Mars on across that same distance, and you're going to have the beehive cluster, M44, right in the heart of Cancer. And so try to identify some of the faint stars of Cancer around it. That will be fun. But if you have you can see this with your naked eye a lot of times. You don't even need a telescope. Just look up, use your averted vision, and you can see this star cluster. A pair of binoculars is going to make it pop out. A telescope, it's so big and wide, a telescope, it tends to fall apart on you. This, by way of comparison to M35, this cluster, the beehive cluster, is a little bit older. It's closer to 700 million years. This was just short of 100 million years. This is 700 million years. Not old by any stretch. Again, the sun's 4.5 billion years old. Maybe even still on the youngish side, but not young by any stretch either. So we're talking about nice mid-range stars, but a little bit older, so the main sequence would have been eaten a little bit further down this direction. Okay, this is great. Let's look ahead to the 11th and the 12th. What I'm recommending for you for the 11th is to look up here at the Big Dipper and follow the handle of the Big Dipper. And if you make a triangle that looks like that, you're right across the whirlpool galaxy M51. Right now is the best time of the year. We've talked about this some in recent weeks, to observe the Virgo supercluster, the Virgo cluster of galaxies, to go out and see galaxies everywhere. That stretches up into the region of the Big Dipper like this. This is actually across the border. The whirlpool galaxy is actually across the border in Canis Venatici. But it's right there. It's easiest to find with the handle of the Big Dipper. It's a kind of faint object and hard to see because it's a galaxy that's tipped up face on like this. So we're looking at the spiral that looks like this, right? We're looking at the face of the spiral instead of the edge. So we're looking through the thin part of the galaxy, not the thick part. But it's a fun target to try. Go to our website, luther.edu/astronomy, and look at pictures of this. Look at other pictures out there. The whirlpool galaxy, it has a small little galaxy that it's gravitationally interacting with as well in that view. So this is a fun thing. Give it a try if you have a telescope. If you don't have a telescope, just enjoy the Big Dipper stars across this direction. Now, on the evening of the 12th into the 13th, we're going to skip up to the morning. All of this stuff could be done in the evening that we're talking about before this. This is M51. It's going to be up all night. You could observe it any time during the night. You got to be up in the morning of the 13th. As we get later in the week, the moon, as we said, is waning away and is tracking easterly against the stars. It's going to catch Saturn. And so the moon's going to sit about 5 degrees. On this morning, the moon will be about 40% full, so a little less than half full. And it's going to sit about 5 degrees south of Saturn. And this whole region of the sky rises about 3 a.m. So somewhere between 3:30 and dawn is probably your best bet to go out and enjoy a view of Saturn. Look east, and you'll see the moon, and you'll see a bright dot above the moon, and that is Saturn. Okay, by the next morning of the 13th into the 14th, so the evening of the 13th into the morning of the 14th, and this is going to be a region that's up most of the night, and you can observe as well. Here's the sickle shape in the tail of Leo. It goes back over here, and you make a triangle head, right? And so you got a triangle tail. You got the sickle shape in Leo. If you drop down a couple of those, you get the bright star you come close to the horizon, if you live in mid-northern latitudes like I do, is Alphard. And that's in Hydra. That's the alpha star in Hydra. We've talked about it a few times before. See if you can find it. See if you can sort of follow this curve down from the head of Leo, the sickle shape of Leo, the backward question mark of Leo. Track that down to the next really bright star you come down, pretty close to the horizon for mid-northern latitude observers like myself. And that's Alpha Hydra. And so just see if you can find that star. If you have a telescope, go over that direction. Just go boom, boom, and see if you can find open star cluster M48. It's our third open star cluster that we're talking about. Remember that M35 was just under 100 million years old. M44 was about 700 million years old. This is halfway in between there, 350 million years old. So its turn-off point would be somewhere in between there. So it's a fun target to try. See if you can see all three of those open star clusters this week. You can probably catch this one in binoculars too, but it's so far south that it's hard to see unless you live south of where I do, because it's so low to the horizon. So I'm not so sure about that one, but give it a try and see if you can observe these three star clusters. Let's jump ahead to the evening. We've made it through the week, right? The evening of the 14th, Sunday evening there, we've got Venus will be closing on Mebsuta. So that's this star Gemini. There's Gemini, Castor, Pollux, there was Mars, and you've got strands of stars for Gemini that stretch down this direction. And Venus was over here next to M35. Venus is closing in on Mebsuta right there. And it's within 2 degrees or so. It's about 2¼ degrees maybe on the evening of the 14th. And it's going to keep closing that down. We watched Mars pass through this region in recent days, in recent weeks. And so now Venus is following Mars across the sky. Venus is tracking Mars down. This is a fun project for the weeks ahead. Mars was here. Mars is going to keep tracking toward the Beehive cluster M44, so watch that. And Venus is going to be screaming across this direction and trying to catch Mars. So as we go through May and into June, it's going to look like Venus is going to close right down on Mars, and that gap is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, and that's going to be fun to watch. Venus and Mars, closing, 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 and you think it's going to catch it. But then Venus is going to turn around and go into retrograde motion, and by the time we get into July, Venus is going to start going rapidly the other direction, and we're going to lose Venus in the evening sky as it sinks back this way. But watch Venus move toward Mebsuta. It'll actually get really close the following week, next week, the 16th and the 17th. That you can watch this Venus really close down on this star, but started on the evening of the 14th, and enjoy Venus moving closer and closer to this star in Gemini and getting closer and closer to Mars as Mars gets closer and closer to the Beehive cluster and starts to track this direction toward Cancer. So this is all great stuff to track going forward. We got a lot of stuff this week. Hopefully you get to see some of it. Hopefully you have some clear skies and you can enjoy some of what we had to look at here. And as always, everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll have something new for you next week.